The world knew Arthur Vance as an unyielding titan, a billionaire forged in the fires of ruthless ambition. His name was synonymous with innovation, his empire a monolithic testament to a singular, unwavering focus on acquisition and dominance. Yet, beneath the polished veneer of his public persona, a startling revelation began to whisper through the hushed corridors of power. Arthur Vance, the man who seemingly had everything, was secretly pursuing something beyond the reach of his immeasurable wealth. It was a pursuit so profound, so fundamentally human, that it seemed entirely at odds with the cold, calculating mind that had built his staggering fortune. Rumors, initially dismissed as idle gossip, slowly congealed into a shared, bewildering curiosity about what could possibly compel a man who commanded global markets to seek out an intangible, unquantifiable prize. Arthur Vance, now crossing the threshold of his 60s, was the undisputed monarch of a tech empire whose tentacles stretched into every facet of modern life. His days were a meticulously orchestrated symphony of high-stakes negotiations, strategic acquisitions, and the relentless pursuit of technological supremacy. He resided in opulence that defied description, a sprawling estate nestled high above the city, its walls echoing with the silence of solitude rather than the warmth of company. Every object within his domain, from the priceless art adorning his walls to the bespoke suits tailored to perfection, screamed of extravagant perfection. Yet, amid this carefully constructed world of luxury, a profound emptiness gnawed at the edges of his meticulously ordered existence. He was surrounded by wealth, but devoid of genuine connection. His life, outwardly an envy-inducing tableau of success, was a stark study in emotional isolation. Every interaction was transactional, every relationship defined by its utility. He had perfected the art of ruthless efficiency, pruning away anything that did not contribute directly to his burgeoning bottom line. There were no spontaneous moments of joy, no shared vulnerabilities, no genuine camaraderie. His days were a relentless march forward, a perpetual conquest of new frontiers, but the victories felt increasingly hollow. The champagne tasted flat, the applause sounded distant, and the magnificent solitude of his mansion became less a sanctuary and more a gilded cage. Despite achieving every conceivable material success, the void within Arthur only deepened. He would sometimes find himself, in rare moments of quiet contemplation, observing others. A couple laughing over coffee at a sidewalk cafe, their hands intertwined. A group of friends sharing a simple meal, their faces alight with genuine amusement. A parent comforting a child, a bond of unconditional love radiating between them. These fleeting glimpses of ordinary human connection, seemingly so effortless, stirred a deep, unacknowledged curiosity within him. He saw people with considerably less wealth deriving immense joy from interactions that cost nothing. He witnessed moments of genuine happiness that money clearly could not buy, nor could it replicate. It was an unsettling realization for a man who had always believed that success equated to accumulation, that power resided in control. What was this elusive ingredient that enriched the lives of others, yet remained stubbornly out of his grasp? He possessed everything the world deemed valuable, yet he felt a profound lacking. This burgeoning awareness, a subtle yet persistent ache in his soul, slowly began to reshape his perspective. It sparked a silent, internal inquiry into the true nature of happiness and, more profoundly, human connection. The questions were unformed, the answers elusive, but the seed of a radical, transformative idea had been planted in the fertile ground of his profound isolation. What if true wealth lay not in what one owned, but in what one shared? The thought, nascent and terrifying, began to take root. To unravel the mystery of Arthur Vance's unexpected transformation from a titan of industry to a seeker of the intangible, subscribe now and join us as we delve deeper into his extraordinary journey. Driven by this burgeoning, almost unsettling intellectual curiosity, Arthur devised a covert social experiment. He would shed the gilded trappings of his identity and immense wealth, immersing himself as an ordinary, anonymous person within a small, unassuming community. This wasn't merely a sabbatical, it was a deliberate, calculated test of the human spirit, a deep dive into the very concept of kindness. He harbored a profound belief that if true human connection genuinely existed, it must surely operate independently of monetary influence, untainted by the seductive power of a fat wallet. He needed to prove this to himself, to unravel the enigma that had gnawed at his meticulously ordered existence. His primary obstacle, however, wasn't an external foe, but a deeply ingrained enemy within, his own pervasive cynicism and an almost reflexive distrust. These were the bitter fruits of decades spent navigating the cutthroat currents of high finance, a world where every handshake held a hidden agenda, every smile concealed a tactical maneuver. He anticipated ulterior motives and self-interest to lurk behind every interaction, making it agonizingly difficult for him to genuinely receive kindness without suspicion or to offer it without a transactional expectation. The true antagonist in this unfolding drama wasn't a person, but the pervasive societal belief, one that Arthur himself had so expertly embodied and profited from, that everything, ultimately, had its price. Under a carefully constructed assumed name, Arthur Smith, and a meticulously crafted backstory of a retired, unassuming accountant seeking a quieter life, he embedded himself in the sleepy coastal town of Seabreeze. He rented a small, somewhat neglected cottage, drove an older, unremarkable sedan, and exchanged his bespoke suits for off-the-rack casual wear. His initial attempts to engage with the locals were, predictably, clumsy and guarded. He frequented the local cafe, ordering black coffee and observing patrons with the keen, dissecting gaze of a venture capitalist sizing up a potential acquisition. When he tried to initiate small talk, his words often felt stiff, analytical, devoid of the effortless warmth he witnessed in others. He'd offer unsolicited advice, born of his vast experience but delivered with an almost professorial detachment, which was often met with polite confusion or a subtle, distancing smile. He volunteered at the community garden, hoping the shared labor might break down barriers. Surrounded by earth and sweat, he found himself explaining optimal soil pH levels or discussing yield per acre ratios, rather than simply enjoying the simple camaraderie of planting. He once offered to optimize the watering schedule, meticulously charting sunlight exposure and evaporation rates, much to the amusement of Mrs. Henderson, a seasoned gardener who simply smiled, patted his arm, and said, "Bless your heart, dear, the flowers just need sunshine and a little love." At the local food pantry, where he also volunteered, he found himself almost unconsciously assessing efficiency, suggesting database improvements for inventory management, and critiquing the distribution methodology. He viewed the acts of giving and receiving not as expressions of empathy, but as logistical challenges to be solved. He struggled immensely to shed his deeply ingrained, transaction-oriented mindset. Kindness, to him, was still an economic commodity, something to be exchanged, accounted for, or optimized, rather than an intrinsic, spontaneous human trait. His awkward social cues often led to misunderstandings, people perceiving him as eccentric, perhaps even a bit cold, rather than the silently struggling billionaire he truly was, desperately trying to unlearn a lifetime of calculated interactions and open himself to the unpredictable, immeasurable currency of genuine human connection. The chill dampness permeated Arthur's threadbare jacket as he leaned against the cold brick wall of the community center, a sudden, searing pain blooming in his chest. It wasn't a heart attack, but a severe case of pneumonia, diagnosed by the kind-faced, overworked doctor at the free clinic. Stripped of his usual meticulous care, his hidden cache of expensive medication, and even his familiar driver, Arthur found himself utterly vulnerable. The assumed identity, the carefully crafted backstory of a retired teacher with modest savings, now felt terrifyingly real. There was no private jet to whisk him to a luxury hospital, no team of specialists at his beck and call. He was just another sick man in a long line, coughing weakly, feeling the terrifying encroachment of helplessness. His small, rented room felt colder, emptier than ever. The familiar ache of loneliness, which even his vast estate couldn't fill, now amplified by physical suffering. Then, a soft knock. It was Maria, the woman from the community garden, her face etched with concern. She carried a steaming bowl of homemade chicken soup and a thermos of herbal tea. "The clinic called me," she explained, her voice gentle, "said you were feeling poorly. I thought this might help." Arthur, weakened and feverish, could only nod mutely, tears pricking his eyes. He'd meticulously recorded her acts of kindness before, the extra tomato, the shared laughter over a stubborn weed, always with a detached, analytical gaze. Now, her simple presence, her unsolicited care, felt like a lifeline. Throughout the next week, a parade of small, selfless acts unfolded around him. Thomas, the cafe owner, brought him fresh bread and fruit, refusing payment. Old Mr. Henderson, whose leaky faucet Arthur had helped fix, stopped by to read him the newspaper, his voice a comforting drone. They didn't know him as Arthur Vance, the titan of industry. They knew him as Arthur, the quiet, slightly awkward man from the end of the street who needed help. There was no expectation in their eyes, no hint of a quid pro quo. They simply saw a person in need and responded with an unburdened generosity Arthur had never truly experienced. This raw, unvarnished kindness shattered his meticulously constructed worldview. The cynicism, the belief that every interaction was a transaction, crumbled under the weight of genuine human warmth. He had sought to test kindness, to dissect it, to understand its mechanics. Instead, he had been enveloped by it, healed by it, transformed by it. It wasn't a commodity, it was a fundamental force, a resonant frequency of shared humanity. His vast wealth had bought him comfort, security, and power, but it had insulated him from this profound, simple truth. The connection formed through shared vulnerability and authentic compassion was something no amount of money could ever purchase. This realization hit him with an overwhelming emotional force, a warmth his lonely heart had yearned for, unknowingly, for decades. Quietly, Arthur returned to his former life, but he was no longer the same man. The meticulously ordered empire now seemed less like a monument to his power and more like a tool. He began to redirect his immense resources, not just for profit, but for genuine community betterment, focusing on initiatives that fostered connection, education, and support in underserved areas. He funded local food banks, endowed scholarships for trades, and invested in community arts programs, not for the tax breaks or public acclaim, but because he understood, finally, the profound value of human relationships and personal integrity over pure financial gain. He found a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment that had eluded him for decades among the sterile zeros of his bank accounts. Now, years later, Arthur Vance often returned to the small community, no longer in disguise, but as a valued friend and benefactor. He would sit in Thomas's cafe, sharing stories and laughter, feeling a contentment that surpassed any market victory. He had found the one thing money couldn't buy, true human connection and the pure joy of genuine kindness, not in grand gestures, but in the simplest acts of empathy, a shared bowl of soup, a comforting presence, and the unwavering belief in the goodness of strangers. If this story touched your heart, like and share it. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of transformation. What do you think money can't buy? Share your thoughts in the comments below.